Creating a thriving community is more than making sure people have a place to live.
It's a place where everyone feels included and has access to essential resources and opportunities.
Thriving is defined as growing vigorously, flourishing. Getting there takes buy-in from residents.
Just the smallest thing that you can do for your community is going to make the largest impact.
For teens, it's as simple as...
I just want like a cleaner or like a better environment.
For months, Brick by Brick has been asking people what a thriving community looks like to them.
A thriving community, oh my gosh, wow. It takes good people, it takes a plan, it takes resources.
On this episode, we look to the new year on what it will take to get there, plus the challenges and the progress some have already made. So let's get into it. This is Brick by Brick, solutions for a thriving community.
Brick by Brick is made possible thanks to leading support from Deborah and Robert Chavez, Greater Cincinnati Foundation, and George and Margaret McLean Foundation, with additional major support from AES Ohio Foundation, Lori Johnston, Murray and Agnes Seasongood Good Government Foundation, Diane and Dave Moshe, the Robert and Jean Penny Endowment Fund of the Dayton Foundation, P&G, the Robert and Adele Schiff Family Foundation, and more. Thank you.
Hello and welcome to Brick by Brick, where we're highlighting solutions for a thriving community in Southwest Ohio. I'm your host, Ann Thompson. We say it all the time, thriving community. It's in our series subtitle. But what does a thriving community look like and how do we get there? One community gave us a blueprint, and we have a variety of other ideas from Cincinnati and Dayton adults and teens. You'll hear those later in the pod. But first, possible roadblocks to getting there and evidence of success from Interact for Health, a nonprofit organization based in Cincinnati, but charged with ensuring people in a 20-county tri-state region have a just opportunity to live their healthiest lives, regardless of who they are or where they live. Ashlee Young, Interact for Health's Vice President of Policy and Engagement, joins us in the studio. Welcome to Brick by Brick.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm very excited to be here today.
Your latest report, which came out in the fall, Our Health, Our Opportunity, identified 4 major obstacles to a thriving community, including the lack of a healthy environment. And I'm wondering, what does that look like and how does this affect somebody's ability to live their best life?
Yes, that's an excellent question. So I think a lot of times when we think about a healthy environment or people being healthy, we often think about hospitals. So when I go out and talk to people, I'm like, what do you need to be healthy? People say access to hospitals. They think about absence of disease and things like that. And all of those things play a part, but our health is way more than healthcare. And so really what this report is just really shedding a light on health is about place in the environment, in the context in which people live.
Yeah, thanks for explaining that. And so briefly, because your report covers a lot, what are the other major obstacles in Interact for Health's report?
Yes, so really what we look at in this report are really kind of 4 areas. One, just focusing in on the vital conditions of health. And so some folks might refer to those as the social drivers, but everything outside of health. So housing, education, economics, environment, like all of those factors play a role into someone being healthy. The other area that we look at too is really systemic racism and discrimination. Until we are really addressing some of those root causes, people are not going to be able to live a healthy, thriving life. The other area that we take a look at is really social isolation and loneliness.
The Gallup Wellbeing Index pointed that out.
Yes, exactly. And then the other area is really looking at how engaged are people in their society? And so really people understanding that you have the power to affect change in your community. So the report takes a look at that. And it also really focuses in on a lot of times when we think about these issues in like health, we're thinking about it from the individual perspective. And really, how do we think about it from a collective community perspective?
Yeah, that's important. Well, our community is working to solve these issues. And let's talk about some stories of progress. You list quite a few in your report.
You know, it really takes a collection and all of us to really do this work. So I think about Cradle Cincinnati and their Mama Certified program. And so that is initiatives where they're working with moms to identify what is the best birthing place for you. And they started and they asked them, what it looked like. And then they developed a program working with local hospitals to really come up with these metrics. And so when I think about the nice marrying of like community leading and deciding and thinking about policy and systems change, I think about that work and what that leads to is better maternal outcomes for women and also looking to address infant mortality as well. And so that is an initiative that I think about of like folks really trying to work together and look at some of those issues. I think the YWCA is doing amazing work and really trying to look at racism and discrimination with their initiatives and working with nonprofits and the trainings and things like that they do. And so I think that those are a few that really kind of stand out for me. I explained to you what a healthy community means to me, and there's a variety of different perspectives that community members have. And so it's really important to really have those perspectives as well.
And to hear from everyone. Sure.
Yes.
So your team, speaking of that, is out in the community asking residents what their hopes and dreams are for a thriving community.
Yes.
What are they telling you, and are any of the responses related to housing?
Yes. And so I will say that housing definitely was a resounding issue that we heard a lot, especially within our rural communities as well. Some other things that we heard, I actually have a couple quotes from folks. So one person shared, a thriving community, in my opinion, is one where there is a sense of unity, support, and equity among community members. It's a place where everyone feels included and has access to essential resources and opportunities. To me, a thriving community looks like a place where there's equal access to resources for all people, abundant green spaces that are accessible to everyone, affordable healthcare, excellent education, affordable housing.
Yeah, and there's some optimism there.
Yes.
And I'm wondering if you had to pick one of the obstacles that you cite in the report, which one are we closest to removing, do you think?
Oh my God, which one are we closest to removing? I will say that I think that there is a lot of energy within our community around housing. And so we're not there yet in trying to address it, but I think there are the right people around the table and a diverse group of stakeholders. I think mental health and well-being too is a huge area of opportunity, and there's a lot of energy within our community of really, especially around our young folks, of really how do we make sure that they feel safe and they feel like they belong and connected for folks.
Well, thank you, Ashlee. We look forward to following the progress Interact for Health is making.
Yes, thank you so much.
You can find a link to the report at cetconnect.org and thinktv.org. One of the other programs Interact points to is Middletown Connect. And Brick by Brick got a firsthand look at the positive change happening, where Melinda Stidham and Otis Trammell are doers, and the kind of couple many communities would love to have.
When you sit there and have dreams and see that you have a chance to do something and be part of something great and be the change the city needs, you can't do that sitting on your couch.
If you do nothing, nothing will happen.
The Middletown residents moved into the Sherman neighborhood 2 years ago and quickly realized they wanted to make it safer, greener, and healthier. They started a neighborhood watch and then a community garden in what was an overgrown vacant lot next to their house. This is important because they live in a food desert.
We're very big on solving problems. We're not wanting to put a Band-Aid on a hiccup because we don't get nothing done that way. And our city's not getting better that way either. Like, we need more people to jump in. Like, we're tired of this. Let's go in here. Let's change it. And that's what we're doing.
Stidham and Trammell are ambassadors for the privately funded organization Middletown Connect. DeAnna Shores is the program manager. She's also known as the Connector.
The innovation is crazy, and what we're really trying to do is kind of connect these folks with some resources to make those things it's more than dreams come true. It's actually some really practical ways that we can make a phenomenal difference in our community.
One of those ways is with the Blueprint Community Garden at the corner of Cleveland Street and Grand Avenue, the one Stidham and Trammell started. On the day Brick by Brick stopped by, Middletown Connect invited people to cut back dead crops and plant fall produce.
You want to do garlic in the 5 in front and greens in the back?
Yes.
Yes, okay.
It wasn't long before Middletown resident and new Planning Commission member A.J. Mantell showed up.
This is literally my first time ever being here and meeting these guys, but I already really appreciate what they're doing.
Melinda walks over and picks a salad tomato for Mantell.
Try that.
Oh, yeah.
You might want to wipe it off.
Which variety is this?
Which is that? You're not going to find something like that out of Maya or out of Walmart. I mean, even if you don't eat it and you just squish it between your hand, all the juices and everything comes out.
There's even a medicinal garden in the back. Mantell stayed to talk to the couple who had their kids out working in the garden. They decided to organize a community think tank and are thinking through how a self-sustaining restaurant might work. Middletown Connect's motto is restoring the pride where we reside. The organization morphed into its current state with the support of the health commissioner, city manager, chief of police, mental health professionals, and Mayor Elizabeth Slamka, who came to the garden.
These are things that actually make a difference for people right now to improve their health, to keep communities strong and vital, keep us connected, which we know is so important for our health, physical, mental, emotional, all of it. So I'm just thrilled. I couldn't be more proud. I couldn't be prouder of Middletown Connect.
Middletown Connect has a grant from Ohio to score communities based on transportation, education, housing, poverty, and access to fresh food. 9 of the 16 census tracts in Middletown consider people vulnerable. Middletown Connect is focused on 3 of those neighborhoods where people are living 12 and a half years less than people in neighboring communities. Here's DeAnna Shores again.
These are real things. It's not about equality. It's about equity. What do I need to feel healthy, to get healthy, to be healthy? What does health look like in southwestern Ohio?
For 2 years now, Middletown Connect has been carving out its identity, asking neighbors what is plaguing them, and looking at strategies to help.
It's been slow and steady, but we had to stop and remove some assumptions that we were all making, and in order to kind of build these pathways to power and really empower people on this level, on the neighborhood level, to say, hey, I want to be involved in this decision-making process, and I want to be a part of the solution that's going to work best for me and my family.
Elks Lodge members reached out and said they'd like to help. They've started a community resource hub. Here's an example.
Once a month, the first Saturday of every month from 10 to 12, we do an expungement hub, because one of the things we talked about was when people have records, they have barriers to housing, they have barriers to better jobs.
Back in the Sherman neighborhood, just down the street from where Melinda and Otis live, the city of Middletown was dedicating new playground equipment at Sherman Park on a Saturday in November.
You guys having fun?
Yeah. This way for Goldman gets the least.
The new merry-go-round and jungle gym were a hit with the kids playing on it. Park Board President Steve Lewis urged them to take care of it and had this advice for adults.
If you're waiting for things to get done in town, that's great. But the town has a lot to get done. How we get some other things done around some of that is through volunteers.
Lewis pointed to Danielle Woodward, who lives across the street in the same house she grew up in and is now a member of the Park Board. She urges others to get involved in their community.
Going around cleaning up trash or anything like that, just the smallest thing can really help out your community. And once people see you doing something, they always follow.
What's interesting is Middletown Connect started as an organization focused on teens and preventing drug use, and along the way discovered many of them felt a lack of connection to the community. Brick by Brick's Amiko Moore heard similar concerns in talking to Dayton teens and has this report.
Children are 20% of our population, but 100% of our future, says Dayton Mayor Jeffrey Mims. What do they experience and want for their neighborhoods? 16-year-old Rick Kubander from Southeast Dayton wants better parks and cleaner areas.
Everybody working together to clean up the community, to clean up the alleys, to fund parks, and to make other curricular activities for kids to stay out the streets.
High school sophomore Goddess Jackson wants to see more entertainment and less violence near her home in West Dayton.
I live in DeSoto Bass, and it's just very, you see drug addicts, kids my age, 16, they can range from 13 too. They selling weed and stuff like that. And of course, that's going to lead up to something. So drive-bys, just yesterday, someone got shot. It was 10 cops down there. And it's just everybody, it's just a normal thing from where I'm from. They normalize it.
Chaz Amos understands the impact. The 22-year-old security resource officer with Dayton Public Schools started the nonprofit I Love West Dayton.
Yeah, I think a lot of that, it can actually become a form of trauma. When you're growing up in an impoverished area where there's trash everywhere, which inevitably is connected to increased violence, lack of morale and pride, it does something to your mindset, you know. It's a common thing because when you live around it so long, it's normal. So when you see trash lined up along the fence line of your park or in a certain area, you know, you don't think anything of it. You actually add to it. You know, depending on what your mindset is, you're like, okay, well, it doesn't matter anyway.
But it does matter. Jessica Salem, Executive Director of the Center for Health Equity at Dayton Children's Hospital, says a child's health has a lot to do with everything beyond the walls of the hospital.
So, you know, we think about 80% of a child's health has to do with things like their housing, their neighborhoods, their homes. So do they have access to walking? Do they have access to a food option? Do they have a safe place to play? You know, if you're walking through a neighborhood and this is your home, and it's not what you desire, you know, and really seeing, you know, I have busted out windows. I see garbage on the street. Like, what does that say about me? And I think that can be, you know, kids are so interested in what people's perception of them are. You know, that is part of growing up. But also, you know, what does this say about me as far as where I live and what, and how I'm valued?
A spark was ignited when Chaz Amos met President Obama at a West Coast teen conference. Soon after, Amos started a community effort of over 200 volunteers to pick up trash in Dayton neighborhoods.
So the primary target areas were parks, streetways, alleyways. That was the main focus, especially our parks where kids play. You know, we've had people who have removed needles, different paraphernalia items, and all kind of different things from the park where our kids play at.
The Department of Public Works joined in with 12 dump trucks to help Amos and his volunteers get rid of over 238,000 pounds of bulk and garbage in 5 neighborhoods.
It made me feel good, for sure. It made me feel like I was getting the message out, especially once, you know, I would see more and more residents out with litter pickers cleaning their, and I don't take credit for that at all. It's just something that I've noticed. You know, folks have decided to go out on their own.
Salem says teens want social connections and naturally want to give back to the community when given the opportunity.
Like, they can get a bad rap, but they genuinely want to impact their community. And I think you see this generation of people that want to make change, right? And they see, hey, we want to do something about that. And that you have to harness that.
Amos encourages teens to take steps to make things happen.
I would say take initiative. You know, you can do your own community cleanup around your house or in your alleyway. There's so many different things that you can do that are very small.
That message is not lost on Rick and Goddess, who, like their peers, just want better neighborhoods.
Like either outside of school programs to keep kids from fighting, or like a better park, so like a better basketball court instead of like grass growing on the basketball court.
So I just feel like we should just help each other. That's really what a good community just, help each other. I feel like a community is whole. It's just not a one person thing.
Thanks, Amiko. I really liked how many of them had goals, and they were pretty realistic goals.
Yes, I was really surprised to hear how many of the teens mentioned wanting cleaner neighborhoods. Some also wanted to feel safer, especially after it gets dark. And something as simple as better lighting in the streets and parks can make a difference in activity level. I mean, other teens wanted community centers where they could learn life skills like cooking or car repairs. And some wanted to connect more with seniors and hear their stories and experiences.
Thanks, Amiko. We'll talk to you later in the takeaways.
Thank you.
Coming up on Brick by Brick, a Dayton organization looks at well-being and starts with one idea it hopes will make a big impact.
How do we start to look at using well-being as a mechanism for changing the system without necessarily flipping the table and just blowing the system up?
And newsmakers from other Brick by Brick episodes weigh in on what a thriving community looks like to them. That's ahead on Brick by Brick.
Brick by Brick is made possible thanks to the generous support of so many, including Rosemary and Mark Schlachter, the Camden Foundation, Patty and Fred Heldman, Dee Dee and Gary West, the Stephen H. Wilder Foundation, Judith and Thomas Thompson, a donation in memory of Frank and Margaret Linhart, and more. Thank you. We couldn't do this work without you.
You know, when we talk about thriving in our neighborhoods, I tend to think about sustainability because any improvements we make, we want them to endure, right? Hi, my name's Mark Lammers and I'm the executive producer for Brick by Brick. And while our team stays focused on exploring and uncovering the next viable solution to what ails us, we're looking to you to help hold us accountable and keep this thing sustainable. And while a donation does go a long way at CET and Think TV, in this case, we're just asking for a little time and feedback. Right now, there's a big green button on our website and a link in the podcast show notes to our audience feedback form. We'd be so grateful if you shared your thoughts about the work we're doing so we can keep improving and connecting solution-minded neighbors like yourself with the social responses that will move our cities in the right direction. Your feedback also helps us seek funding to keep this effort going. We appreciate your time and can't wait to hear from someone in every neighborhood. Thank you.
Welcome back to Brick by Brick. How we measure success in our community matters. Many of the metrics that cities and towns look at are economic, like GDP, employment rates, population size, and average incomes. And those are worthwhile indicators, but perhaps there's room for additional measures. Cities typically will do surveys on right track, wrong track for the city as a whole. You know, people like or dislike the direction or leadership or have some other concerns. So beyond these, what other measures could be taken? It turns out there's a strong correlation between the well-being of community members and the success of that community. Seems like common sense, right? But studying individual well-being is not standard at all. That's why a Dayton group has been working toward establishing a well-being index to serve the community in a number of ways. The Community Well-Being Initiative first intends to utilize a standardized survey on well-being that was established by the international polling and analytics company Gallup over decades of testing. Peter Benkendorf and his team at the Dayton Collaboratory say the index focuses on the 5 essential elements of well-being: career, social, financial, physical, and community.
It really allows us to begin to change the narrative and to look at how those that have been left behind are doing. It addresses policy advocacy, it addresses resource allocation, because we have data now that shows as well-being goes up, we're going to get better community outcomes. And I think the premise of this conversation is, what defines a thriving community. And I think, we go for the ultimate in our language. Our community will be its most thriving by definition when every single person here is realizing their potential. And I think that's really what excites us. It's why the Collaboratory exists. Our tagline is Unleashing Dayton's Potential. But you can't realize your potential unless you're experiencing well-being.
Organizers like Benkendorf have been working on this project for 5 years and see the community-wide baseline research as the first key part of this effort. They're working to raise the funds for this Phase 2 part. Another innovative component of the initiative is something called the Richter scale. No, not the earthquake intensity measurement system, but a different Richter scale developed in the 90s in the UK. It was originally used to help young criminal offenders and their families overcome personal obstacles, but it's now being adapted and applied to make it useful to businesses, organizations, and communities. Its website says the scale revolves around measuring self-reported personal achievements and then helps provide guidance and connections to individuals to assist them in their journey. As the team continues to build momentum around its well-being index and the Richter scale model, in the near term, they're stepping up to impact their neighbors by erasing medical debt. The Community of Wellbeing Initiative will help more than 11,000 people in 7 counties pay off $18 million in medical debt, to be exact. The idea is, without these payments, residents can better spend their money to help themselves and their community. With ideas like this and others,
we become a living laboratory for what a lot of other cities can be doing. I think that would be a hopeful outcome.
When it comes to paying off medical debt, it's good to note that Cincinnati is also doing something similar, forgiving $134 million through a city-funded partnership. We'll be continuing to follow the efforts of the Dayton Collaboratory, including the Wellbeing Index, and bring you the latest information right here on Brick by Brick. The core of our show seeks to find solutions, many times through partnerships that lead to thriving communities. Brick by Brick multimedia journalist Herns Laguerre Jr. has been rigorous in asking and reminding the rest of the team to ask our guests what a thriving community means to them. Take a listen.
Throughout our coverage of the first season on Brick by Brick, we've been asking our guests their opinions on what makes a thriving community. And although our first season revolves around housing, our guests showed us that a thriving community is deeper than that. Dayton resident Alice Wood from our Episode 5 Right to Counsel podcast explains.
It starts with affordable housing, quality affordable housing, because with that, people can remain housed. By being unhoused, it causes so many problems, from just issues with health-wise to maybe your employment status, children's education, and I mean, it's a necessity.
Advocates for Basic Legal Equality Incorporated, or ABLE for short, just launched their Access to Counsel pilot program this fall to help decrease the over 3,000 evictions in Dayton and help keep more people housed. Another Dayton resident, Kanika Lovett, from our Episode 13 Choice Voucher podcast, sat down with our multimedia journalist, Amiko Moore, and imagined her ideal community.
A thriving community is life. You gotta have life in your neighborhoods. I wanna see the kids outside playing again. Parks, recreation. Grass helps people grow. You need grass. Grass is life. You know, just get out there and get in the grass.
People want to enjoy their neighborhoods and do their everyday activities with as much ease as possible. Marie Hornsby from our Episode 7 ADU podcast talks about an important component to make doing everyday activities easier.
Even walkability and being able to get around is huge. You can head on down to a local park, you can head down to restaurants, you can head to a store. To be in a thriving community is to have everything that you and your family need to function within a reasonable distance.
Marianne Taylor from our second Adaptive Reuse podcast in Episode 15 shared with our host, Ann Thompson, what fun activity she likes to do.
Another trend that I personally am passionate about is the bike trails that have been established throughout Cincinnati, Northern Kentucky, and the ultimate goal is for the Crown Bike Trail to connect all across the state of Ohio. So we've really seen, from a development standpoint, more businesses and multifamily developments really pop up along those bike trails because we've found that people want to live by those.
According to the organization Tri-State Trails, there has been more people like Marianne using Greater Cincinnati's bicycle and pedestrian trails in the last few years. And with the Connected Communities policy reforms in Cincinnati, increasing walkability in the city is top priority. Jeff Mills from Episode 14, Large Scale Apartments, points out that families from different backgrounds have similar priorities.
Regardless of your background, there is opportunity for you. A thriving community is one in which there's an active street life and a healthy culture. There's acceptance. There's the ability to live the American dream, right? Like I talk about this with my son frequently. You know, what is the American dream? It's that each generation we have opportunities to get closer to what it is that we want.
Late this fall, there was a housing strategy briefing and discussion in Northern Kentucky to help foster ideas and solutions to create more opportunities for people to find the American dream in the region. Brent Cooper, president of the Northern Kentucky Chamber of Commerce, spoke at the event. In the episode we haven't released yet, he shared the things that build a quality life.
Your community health, your ability to have a place to live, and your ability to grow a family, to have amenities within your community that make your quality of life high. I often say we want a place that's a great place to live, work, play, learn, and give back. We feel like we have that in Northern Kentucky, but we're missing components. Housing is one of those big components.
And it's not just in Northern Kentucky. All over the country, leaders in government, nonprofits, private businesses, and everyday people like you, our listeners, are all working to add these missing components and fill the gap between where we are and that thriving community we're working towards. And in all these different communities in America, housing is the one component that could help fill that gap in a mighty way.
Thanks, Hearns. I really loved hearing the different responses to the same question. Any common themes from our guests?
100%. There are many. I'll include some of the major ones online, but both Kanika Lovett and Alice Wood, in response to their question, asked me a rhetorical question of what happened to the block party. They both described how these block parties or public gatherings in a neighborhood gave neighbors an opportunity to build together and network. And I love the thought of that because it builds upon the idea that we need each other to build and grow and thrive.
Good thoughts. Well, we'll talk to you in the takeaways momentarily, Hearns.
Yes, ma'am.
We want to hear from you as Brick by Brick develops more episodes. Go to our website, cetconnect.org and thinktv.org, where you'll find a big green button to give feedback. That's where you'll also see related articles, a link to the podcast, and Hearns and Amico's video stories, as well as online extras. We'd love to hear from you. It's time for takeaways, and we welcome to the microphone Amico Moore.
Hello.
And Hearns Legare Jr.
Hey, everyone.
I know this was kind of a different format where we each went out in the community and tried to find what makes a thriving community. Amico, what are your thoughts? Why don't you start?
Sure. My takeaway is that a thriving community is one where people get to know one another and help one another. That's really, it sounds really basic, but it's as basic as it gets. For Chaz Amos, it was very empowering. He galvanized a community of over 200 volunteers to pick up trash in so many neighborhoods. And sometimes it just takes one person to get the ball rolling, and then others join in and help. He's now connected with many people that he got to know through this effort. And so this kind of give and take is mutually beneficial, and it helps communities thrive.
And you can start small. So in terms of Middletown Connect, there were two people who saw this vacant lot right next to their house, and it was really bringing down their neighborhood. And they realized we could start a community garden, an urban garden where we plant fruits and vegetables. They even have a medicinal garden. They got some sponsors that helped with some of the costs. The community gave them permission to do it. And because of this one small garden on a corner lot, people who live around there have started fixing up their houses. They've started painting their fences. So it is making a difference.
Yeah, and I like that story, Ann, because I think it just shows how people from the neighborhood can work together to make something happen. And, you know, in this podcast, we've had the pleasure of having a diverse group of people on our show, people from different neighborhoods, different economic backgrounds, different cultures, etc. But we've all asked them the same question, as you guys know, what makes a thriving community? And I like to believe it's because as a show, we want to highlight that despite all of our differences, we all live in the same community. And for as far-ranging as the responses were, there were just as many similarities. At the bare minimum, every single person wanted better for themselves and their neighborhoods, places with resources, opportunities to better their lives and sustain that. The similarity that came up most often centered around creating affordable and available housing, as we've discovered in our podcast. And even as we go on to discuss different topics in the future seasons, housing will be a reoccurring component to creating that thriving community.
And we're going to continue to ask the question, what makes a thriving community?
Yes,
and
ma'am.
we want to hear from you, the listener. You can weigh in at cetconnect.org or thinktv.org. Thanks, guys.
No problem.
Thank you.
Brick by Brick is taking some time off during the holidays. Coming up January 8th, communities faced with rising housing costs are creating and expanding villages guaranteed to remain affordable. They're called community land trusts. Here's where the idea came from, according to the Grounded Solutions Network.
A group of folks, including two cousins of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., ended up going to Israel and studying their communal farm operations in Israel. They came back and created what we use today as the community land trust model.
How they work and who they benefit. That's next time on Brick by Brick. That's our show. If you like what you hear, please rate and review our podcast. It makes it easier to find. We hope you learned something, and if you did, please tell your friends and family about it. For Emiko Moore and Herz Laguerre Jr., I'm Ann Thompson. We'll be back soon with more solutions. Take care and have a fantastic holiday. Our show is produced, hosted, and edited by me, Ann Thompson, with reporting and story editing from Herz Laguerre Jr. and Emiko Moore. Our executive producer is Mark Lammers. Our show consultant is Gloria Skursky. Gabe Wimberly is our audio engineer and mixer. Zach Kramer runs the lights and cameras. Derek Smith is our production specialist, and Jason Garrison is our production manager. Kelly May heads up our marketing and promotions, along with Mike Shea and Bridget Dillenberger. Alyssa Stephenson handles the website, and Steve Wright is our designer. Bill Dean and Andreas Kruja are the engineers for the show, and our chief content officer is Colin Shenamblo. Our music is from Universal Production Music. Brick by Brick, Solutions for a Thriving Community is a production of CET and Think TV, Southwest Ohio PBS member stations.